Grab yourself a coffee and pull up a seat because today I'm teaching you how to play Mythwind from Open Owl Studios. I'm Mark Maya, and this is Board Game Coffee.
Vincent, get back here this instant!
Thank you. Oh, I love you too. I couldn't have done it without you. Thank you. Thank you.
In whispered tales, Mysterious Valley was said to lie hidden. Today, that legend stirs to life as you meet magical sprites, urging your troubled community to seek refuge there. With Fix as your guide, you journey through the winding passes to unveil a mesmerizing Mythwind Valley. Amidst its enchanting beauty, ancient foundations and a looming tower silently testify you tread where legends once walked. Mythwind is a cooperative board game for 1 to 4 players that immerses you in a world of resource management, worker placement, and asymmetric gameplay. If you picked up the Expanded Horizons expansion, then you can experience Mythwind with up to 5 players. Mythwind's unique design offers a persistent gaming experience, ensuring that the adventure never truly ends. This means you can play the game forever, or you can just call it quits at the conclusion of the story. Or not. It's open-ended, so it's really up to you. Every character in Mythwind brings with it its own unique gameplay, so we're shaking things up a bit with our How to Play format. This video is all about the core game rules, and that's it. But each playable character will have their own separate video breaking down their specific rule set, which I'll include the links to in the description. So, to get started, simply watch this core guide to the rules, and then dive into the video of the character that you're eager to play. If you're ever in need of additional information or clarity on any section of this video, the Rulebook's clarification section has got you covered. Plus, there's this handy glossary detailing many of the in-game icons right here on the back of the book. If you're looking for a specific section of this video, check out the index in the description below. First thing we're going to set up is the town board. Lay out the 3 town sections in the middle of the playing area so everyone can easily reach. When you're done, the board should look like this. Then take the spring season tile and place it in this open slot here. On that same town board section, you'll notice these resource tracks. Place each of the 4 resource tokens in the number 1 slot of those tracks. Grab the 12 forest tiles and match each card with the corresponding number on the town board. Quick note, there's no forest card for space 7. The 4 action tiles are placed in these designated spots on the board, as shown here. You'll know the tiles are in the right spot because the art on the tile matches up with the art on the board. Now, take the Longhouse card and lay it face up in the 7th spot, the one that didn't get a forest card. Next, roll one of the blue sprite die and an orange villager die and set them on this tower space. If you roll a blank, re-roll that die until the result is no longer blank. Find event card number 1 and slot it into the game tray face down. Gather up the adventure cards numbered 1 through 10, shuffle them up, and add them to the game tray number side up. Then cap it off with the adventure card cover. Now collect all the cards that make up the weather deck and add them to the game tray face down. No shuffling needed for our first game. Take the goal cards numbered 1 through 7, give them a shuffle, and place them in the game tray face down. Then flip the top card face up for everyone to see. Next, separate your coins into these 3 spaces, place your gold tokens here, and all your unused worker dice here. The dice divider can be slotted here for now. We won't need that again until much later. I like to keep the game tray at the end of the board like this, but you can keep it anywhere that works best for your group. Once that's done, place the building cards nearby. They can be viewed at any time, so try to keep them in reach of all players. Alright, now for the fun part, choosing our character. Once you know which character you want to play as, grab their tray along with their mini and place it in front of you. Now, we won't be covering character setup in this video, but I will show you how to set up your character in our dedicated character videos that I've linked in the description. And that's it. Well, aside from your character setup, but you know the deal. Anyways, let's learn how to play. Okay, before we dive into the teach, let's take a moment to familiarize ourselves with the gameplay area, shall we? Right here in front of us is the heart of the game, the town board. Spread across it, you'll notice various spots. These are locations. Now, if you look over here, you'll see where we keep a close eye on the town's resources. On the other side of the town, you'll see the construction queue. This is where your buildings get made. Over here is the tower. It's kind of like a worker's lounge. Workers in this area are up for grabs by anyone. But here's the catch. Once you decide to hire a worker, they're on your team and yours alone, at least until they circle back to the communal tower space. And a quick heads up about the money situation. If you've collected it, then it's yours. No sharing allowed. All right, now that we've had our little tour, who's ready to learn? All right, now you might have noticed that I have the farmer miniature and tray in front of me, but today we're not focusing on the farmer's rules. But if you're eager to learn more about the farmer, there's a dedicated video for that. But let's get through this one first. Our focus for this video will be on the core rules of the game. These are the basic rules that every player will follow no matter which character they're playing. Now, some characters have a few extra steps that take place during certain core phases of the game, but those details will be covered in each character's individual video. Oh, and heads up, there are these intriguing secret envelopes that we won't be covering in any of our videos because, well, who wants to ruin a good surprise? When the time comes, the game will instruct you on which envelope to open, and each of them will have all the instructions you need inside, along with any new components that are required. Now, here's an important note about Mythwind's gameplay. You see, everyone plays simultaneously during each of the game's phases, but teamwork is still key, so make sure you're communicating. You'll also want to make sure that everyone's completed the current phase before the group moves on to the next. Speaking of phases, the gameplay for Mythwind takes place over 4 seasons that repeat, just like real seasons do. And each season is made up of days. And every day is divided into 3 distinct phases. We've got dawn, daytime, and dusk. Now that we got all that sorted out, let's learn how each of those phases play, starting with the dawn phase. Each day starts off with the dawn phase. This is where Mythwind Valley gets its weather updates. Think of it as a mini forecast which brings either bounties or not so great news for our town. So what do we do during dawn? First up, check the weather. Flip over the top card of the weather deck and lay it out near the town board. It'll show what kind of weather we'll be dealing with today: sunny, cloudy, or rainy. Now, being that this is the start of a new season, you'll only see one card on the table. But for the sake of this explanation, let's skip ahead a few days. As days go by, you'll stack up the weather cards like this, so that you can see the weather icon from the previous days. By the 3rd day and beyond, you'll have a neat little stack of cards. Once you've revealed the weather for the day, compare the 3 most recent weather icons from our stack of weather cards and check to see if they match up with one of the weather patterns on our season tile. If it does, trigger the season effect listed below the matching pattern. What these icons at the bottom of the season tile mean will come up throughout the video, but we'll talk through an example in just a little bit. After that, check if the weather card you just played has a weather effect as indicated by one of these 2 icons. If it does, resolve the effect now. If there's no icon shown, then there's no effect to resolve. When you see this icon, it means that each building in the construction queue advances 1 space. If there are no buildings in the queue, then nothing happens. We'll be covering construction queues in more detail later in the video. If the weather card shows this icon, immediately reveal and resolve an event card. When resolving an event, players draw the top card of the event deck, read it out loud, and do what it says. If the card presents a choice, Players must all agree on which of those choices to select. Once that's done, the event card is removed from the game. If any card in the game ever requires you to suffer a penalty that you can't meet, just do as much as you can. For example, if a card tells you to lose 2 food, but you only have 1, you'll just lose that 1 food. And if the benefit has a cost associated to it, you gotta pay it in full or miss out on the perk. Later in the video, we'll cover both the construction queue and event cards in more detail. But before that, let's run through a quick example of the dawn phase. First, reveal a weather card. Then, check the icons of the last 3 weather cards against the weather icons shown on the season tile. As we can see here, the last 3 weather icons we drew match this weather pattern, which means we trigger the effect listed below. In this case, the effect has increased our production resource by 1, which we will track here on the resource track. Next, we resolve the weather effect, if any. As we can see here, there is in fact a weather effect, and this one in particular means that we need to advance all the buildings in the construction queue by 1 step. Easy enough. And that ends our dawn phase. The daytime phase is when most of the gameplay will take place, and it goes a little something like this. First, you're going to take a single town action. Think of it as your primary daily task. Once that's done, you'll jump into your character's special actions. And after that, you'll be able to assign your hired workers to a variety of available tasks. Now, those tasks are character specific, so we won't be covering them in this video. Now, for those town actions I mentioned, there's a handful that you can choose from, but you can only perform 1 a day. You'll either head out on an adventure, improve the town, or discover new lands, construct, or even demolish buildings, or hire some workers. When you've chosen your action, you'll place your character on that action's space. But if someone's already there, you'll have to pick a different action. No doubling up allowed. Now, if you don't want to perform any of those basic town actions, you'll also have the option to use the effects printed on any one of these constructed town buildings. Although at the start, the only building you'll have access to is this longhouse building that we placed during the setup. Let's break down each of the available actions, starting with the adventure action. When you take the adventure action, draw the top card of the adventure deck and read the front side of the card. That's the side with the number on it. This card will present you with a choice. Once you've decided which one you want to do, flip the card over and focus only on the section that matches the choice you selected. Then, resolve the instructions as written in that section. And, unless stated otherwise, remove the card from the game. This space here allows you to take one of 2 actions: improve town or discover land. But you can only pick one. You can't do both. Choosing the improve town action means you're adding to the town's shared resources, but the cost to do so varies depending on your character, as we can see here on the back of their character header. For instance, the farmer can spend 5 coins to increase the food resource by 1, while the ranger would need to spend 10 coins to do the same thing. When paying for an improvement, take the coins from your own personal stash, return them to the supply, and increase the resource you paid for by 1. And as long as you can afford to do so, you can perform this action multiple times at once. So if the farmer character wants to increase food and culture at the same time, they could just pay 20 coins and increase both of those resources by 1. The other action you can perform from this location is the Discover Land action. By spending 5 coins, you can clear out a forest card from the board and earn the reward listed on its back. Plus, you've just freed up a new location for a future building. Taking this action here will allow you to either construct or demolish a building in the town, but not both. When using the construct action, you can construct a building from this stack of cards. But each building has a prerequisite and a cost that must be met. If you can't meet both, you can't construct that building. For example, the prerequisite for the tavern is the general store. If you want to construct this building, you'll need to have the general store already built. The next thing you'll need to check is the building's cost. In a 1 to 2 player game, you'll pay the cost listed here. If you're playing with 3 or more players, you'll pay the cost listed here. As you can see, the cost of constructing a building is paid for by using town resources. For instance, to build the tavern in a 2-player game, you would need to reduce the town's income by 1, production by 1, and food by 3. If you don't have the resources to cover the cost, then you can't build the tavern. But let's assume we do. After checking to see if we meet the prerequisite, and paying the proper cost according to the player count, place the building card face down into the construction queue slot indicated here. The tavern, for example, goes into the second slot. If that slot is currently occupied, simply slide the tavern down to the next available slot. But if there is no next available slot, then you can't start construction on that building. For this example, let's assume the queue was empty. Throughout the game, you'll come across cards that will advance buildings up the construction queue. These advancements will be indicated with this icon. More often than not, this will be due to the effect of a weather card. If a building in the top slot of the construction queue is advanced, remove it from the queue, earn the reward listed here, if any, and place it face up in any available space on the town board. This building is now available to use during the daytime phase. If there are no available spaces in the town when the building is supposed to leave the queue, it will instead stay in the queue, which could cause a backup of construction projects. Before we move on to the demolish action, there are 2 other types of prerequisites that I'd like to go over. When you see a prerequisite with this replace icon, it means that once this building leaves the construction queue, it will replace the building listed as its prerequisite. So in this example, when the church is complete, we would replace the chapel in town with the church card. The building you remove will be placed back into the building stack. And when you see a prerequisite like this one that calls out a specific card type, in this case, adventure card, it's just letting you know that this building will be constructed as the result of an adventure card. Hence why it doesn't have a cost. Now, when and how this adventure card shows up, well, you'll just have to wait and see. Alright, now let's learn all about the demolish action. We've covered how you would use this action to construct a building. But the other thing you can do is demolish a building. When you take the demolish action, just remove any one constructed building from the town board and return it to the stack of building cards. It's not gone forever though. You can always rebuild it later if you change your mind. The hire action allows you to hire workers from the tower and place them in your dice well. There are 2 types of workers available: villagers, these orange dice, and sprites, the blue dice. To hire a worker, simply pay 2 coins to hire 1 worker, or 5 coins to hire 2. The workers you hire can be from different colors. When you place a hired worker in your dice well, make sure that the value showing on their die remains the same. So if it was a 3 on the tower, it's going to be a 3 in your dice well. Now, what you do with these workers once you have them will be explained in the individual character videos, since what they do relies heavily on which character you're playing. Unlike the basic town actions, the use building action is not specific to one area on the board. By placing your miniature on an unoccupied building in town, you're able to use that building's effect, as listed here. And given the sheer number of buildings available, I won't be going over everything you can do. Instead, I'll be teaching you how to read the effects on a building card. And since the only building we started the game with is the longhouse, that's what I'll use for the example. If you're curious about what the other buildings do, check out the appendix in the rulebook. It'll describe in detail what each of the buildings do. Using a building is pretty straightforward. You'll place your mini on the building you want to use and activate its effect. For instance, with the longhouse, you have two choices. Either earn a coin or buy a skill for your character. Now, taking a coin is as simple as it sounds. Just take it from the supply and add it to your own personal stash. However, that second option, that's where the magic happens. Every character in Mythwind boasts a unique set of skills, showcased by these tokens. On one side, you've got the skill's effect, and on the other, its cost. When you choose to buy a skill from the longhouse, pay the price indicated on the back of the skill token, and place it into any slot on your character tray. At this point, feel free to rearrange any existing skills when adding a new one. But unless you are adding a new skill, those tokens stay put. Now, while the longhouse itself doesn't have a cost to use its effects, you will still need to pay for the skill token when acquiring that skill. But not all buildings are free to use. Take the general store, for example. It allows you to take one additional character action during the current day, but at the cost of 3 coins. The cost will be displayed on the left side of the colon, and the effect will appear on the right. If a building doesn't have a colon, then there is no cost. If you see a slash like this one, it means you have a choice of this or that. And some buildings will have this end of season icon. It can't be used as an action, but it will activate at the end of the season, which we'll cover later in the video. Remember the goal cards we set up earlier? Well, goals are little challenges that you and your teammates will work together to achieve. The current goal card, the one that's face up and visible, is the active goal for the current season. The active goal card is checked at the end of the season. If you and your team were successful in achieving the goal listed, you'll earn a reward. But if you fail to meet the challenge, you'll suffer a penalty. Now, if a goal asks you to, say, build a specific number of buildings, use these goal tokens to track your progress. So in this example, every time anyone on the team would construct a building, I would just add 1 token to the goal card. Personally, whenever I'm feeling stuck or undecided on what I should do next, I like to take actions that work toward completing the goal for the current season. So keep an eye on that goal card. It'll help you stay focused and earn some sweet rewards. We'll have more information on goal cards in the end of season section of this video, so stay tuned. Alright, before we head into the Dusk Phase, let's take a moment to talk about alignment. You've probably noticed these little indicators on the actions that we've been taking. When you pick an action in town, it determines who your character is aligned with, either the sprites or the villagers. Your alignment matters, as it dictates which actions your characters can take later on. Now, if you take an action with a sprite icon, that means that your character is aligned with the sprites. If it's got a villager icon, your character is aligned with villagers. Simple as that. The hire action works a little different. The type of worker you hire, be it sprite or villager, will decide your alignment. So if I hire a sprite, I'm aligned with sprites. But if you happen to hire both during the same action, you get the luxury of choosing your alignment when it comes time to taking your character action, which we'll touch on in just a bit. The adventure action has its own little twist on alignment. When you pick an adventure card and make a choice, your alignment is decided by the option you chose. So as you can see here, by choosing this option, I would be aligned with villagers. But if I chose this option, I would be aligned with the sprites. For building actions, it's pretty straightforward. It'll either indicate a sprite alignment, villager alignment, or give you the option to choose. Now, if I haven't said it before, I'm saying it now. The side you align yourself with during the town action will have a huge impact on what your character can do when performing their character actions. Let me give you a quick rundown on what I mean. Your character's individual tray acts kind of like a menu of actions that they can take. If you're aligned with sprites, then you get to pick from any one of these blue actions. Align yourself with villagers, and you can select from any of the orange actions. And as you can probably tell from looking at this character tray, this center action here can be performed with either alignment. Now, if you want to know exactly what all of those actions do, head over to our character-specific videos. Once we finish performing a single town action, we move on to our character actions. Each character has their own unique set of actions laid out on the back of their character journal, which must be performed from top to bottom. You don't need to perform every action, but the actions you do must be performed in order. And we'll go over all of this in the character videos. Now, after each character action, there's also a perform worker action. These are specific to each character, so we'll save those for the individual character videos. But if you hang around till the end of this video, I'll give you a quick rundown on some worker basics. The final phase of the day is dusk. This is the point where we reset for the next day. Start by returning all your characters from the town board to their respective trays. Next, return workers to their rightful locations. Hired workers with one or more pips still showing on their die faces go back to their character's dice well. However, if a hired worker is showing no pips, roll their die and return them to the tower space on the town board. If the roll turns up a blank result, re-roll it until it doesn't. Some characters will have additional steps that they'll need to take during the Dusk Phase, but we'll discuss them in their respective videos. Once you've done all there is to do, check to see if there are any weather cards remaining in the weather deck. If there's at least one, start a new day with the Dawn Phase and repeat the steps we covered earlier in the video. But if the weather deck is empty, the season concludes and we move on to end of season procedures. When the weather deck runs out, it signals the end of the season. And when that happens, this is what you need to do. Firstly, look for any town buildings showing the end of season icon. For instance, the chapel would increase our culture resource by 1 at season's end. Next, check to see if you've met the challenge on the goal card. Then flip it over. If you've succeeded, earn the reward listed on the top portion of the card and remove the goal card from the game. Often, your reward will instruct you to add a new goal card to the deck. But if you didn't meet the challenge, you'll suffer the penalty listed on the bottom half of the card and add the card back into the goal deck. Either way, fail or succeed, shuffle up the goal deck, draw the top 2 cards, and pick one of those goals to be your challenge for the upcoming season. Once you've done that, shuffle the card you didn't select with the others and place them face down in the tray, with the card you did select face up on top. Next, freshen up the weather deck by shuffling the cards and laying them face down in the tray. Now it's time to switch seasons. Seasons change from spring to summer to fall to winter, then back to spring. So since we just completed spring, we'd set the season tile to summer. At this point, you have a choice to make. You can either keep your current character for the next season, or swap your character for a new character, or save the game to continue at a later date. If you decide to switch characters or save your game, you'll find the steps for saving your character's progress in the back of their character journal. As for saving the town board, I've got you covered. First thing you're going to do when you save the game is remove all the workers from the tower and transfer them to the supply tray, making sure to maintain the pip value of each die. The game provides dividers that you can use to separate the workers you've acquired from those remaining in the general supply. Then stack each section of the town board neatly on top of one another and place it neatly in the supply tray. Once everything is in place, secure it with the provided lid. With these steps completed, your game is neatly organized and ready to be stored back in the box. Alright, now when you're ready to jump back into the game, this is what you do. Place the town board in the center of the table just like we did during the setup. Except this time, you'll have the resources and buildings you earned in the previous game already on the board. Next, grab all the dice from the unlocked portion of the supply tray and place them onto the tower space, careful to maintain their pip values. Now it's time to pick your character. You can stick with your old favorite or try someone new. It's completely up to you. Alright, I've mentioned a few times in this video that if you have any additional questions about any part of the rules or how a particular building works, the rulebook has got you covered. That said, I'd like to take this time to cover some basic rules I think you would find very useful. First, let's talk about some universal worker concepts. This icon here represents a sprite or a villager located at the tower. Now, if you see the same icon but with a hand under it, it indicates hired versions of those workers, the ones sitting in your dice well. Knowing the difference between the two will be helpful when you're paying for costs or following instructions that deal with workers. When you see a worker icon with an up arrow, increase the value of that worker by 1. In a case like this, when you see the arrow combined with an infinity symbol, it means increase the value of every worker in the tower area. Same goes for the down arrow, except you'll be decreasing the value of the indicated worker instead of increasing it. Whether you're increasing or decreasing the value of a worker can never be increased beyond 3 or reduced below 0. When an action includes a hired worker in the cost, like this one, the character performing the action will take one of the workers from their dice well, tick it down 1 step, and leave it on the card that required it. Don't worry, you'll get it back at the end of the Dusk Phase. Also, if a worker in the tower is ever turned or rolled to their blank side, continue to re-roll it until it's no longer blank. Lastly, unless you're explicitly told to lose a worker, workers are never returned to the general supply. Before we wrap up this video, there are a few icons that I'd like to bring to your attention. When you encounter one of these icons with a plus or minus symbol on it, increase or decrease the specific resource accordingly. This icon here signifies any resource. So if your reward displays this icon, it means you may increase any one resource of your choice by 1 step. If the icon is using the cost of an action, it means you can reduce whichever resource you want to cover that cost. And lastly, if your reward includes this hire icon, it means you can hire one of the depicted type of workers from the tower at no cost. Although, if there are no workers of that type available in the tower, you get nothing. And that's it for the core rules of Mythwind. Now, all you gotta do is select the character that you want to play with and watch their personalized how to play video. Now, I hope this video helps, and I hope you enjoy playing Mythwind. See you next week. Thanks for joining us. If you like this video and you want to see more, subscribe to our channel. It's the best way to keep up to date with everything we do here at Board Game Coffee. But if you want to see more right now, we got plenty of videos to choose from. And if that's not enough, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm Mark Maya, and this is Board Game Coffee. And remember, have fun, keep gaming, be social. See you next week.